Thank you, Purnila, for that lovely introduction. I'm Priyanka, and joining you shortly for the Q&A is Shreyasi, and we are Western Museum. As folks who are frequently sick and have taken a lot of sick leave and have even been reprimanded for it, today we wanted to talk about sick, disability, and accessibility, particularly of public spaces drawn on architecture, design, and protest. But at the heart of our work is movement and the infrastructure of accessibility or not. As you may tell, our presentation is basically a very annoyed rant about inaccessible structures dressed up in some fancy academic language. We promise to show you our work, which are interventions in these discourses, but it's at the end, so we request your patience and indulgence. Take a moment to think of the word sick. How often do you use it? What does it mean? Is it cool and amazing, like a sick beat? Or is it something disgusting that makes you sick? Is it sometimes the excuse you make when you want to skip class or a friend's meeting that you just don't want to go to? Or is it that really terrible feeling in your body that incapacitates you and you really just wanted to leave? Consider these news headlines from across the globe using the word sick. This action, how would paid sick leave impact your business? New study finds working while sick actually harms productivity and retention, though. Rising sick days are costing European businesses billions every year. Why did this Italian town ban its residents from falling sick? And my personal favorite, Selena Gomez is a sick person for crying on Instagram over ICE rates, says Megan Telly. So sick. It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. By Jiddu Krishnamurti. We encounter this quote on social media, at least in India we do, especially after something gruesome or violent happens. It's almost always compared with sickness, poor health, insanity, etc., and not seen as an issue in its own right. How is being down with a high fever the same as physical assault? This leads us to this philosopher, Frederick Jameson, whose concept of the political unconscious gives us a sense of words, how they are used, what they mean, and how they manifest in professional practices. Who names, who shames, who gets shamed and pushed into oblivion, and how? Political unconscious as a concept leads us to uncover and understand meanings and conflicts in cultural production, including who gets to participate. It gives meanings and determines symbolism of aesthetic objects. So, what does it speak about dominant cultural narratives? Now, this very good-looking professor, Tobin Silvers, whom we at Western Museum love for his seminal work on disability aesthetics, and no other reason I swear, builds on the political unconscious and says, inclusion in culture are political decisions that often depend on being able to display a healthy body and mind. Statements that label cultural attitudes, minority groups, lifestyles, and works of art as healthy or sick are not metaphors but aesthetic judgments about the physical and mental condition of citizens. What then becomes of such labels and cultural attitudes? Taken from racial apartheid, Tobin Sivers, whom we just mentioned, also expands upon the concept design apartheid, coined by Rob Imrie, for planning and structures that serve to segregate disabled bodies from the mainstream. This form of discrimination allows and disallows participation by design. Architects and designers, while designing spaces, assume a sameness and able-bodiedness in a population. Built forms are inscribed with the civilist value of the society, and therefore privilege form over function. In the first semester of architecture programs in India, in classes about anthropometric standards, students are taught the concept of modular man by the talented French architect Le Corbusier, who designed and planned many important buildings and cities in India, including the city of Chandigarh and the Sanskar Center building near Shreyasi's former workplace. This modular man, who is the basis for so much design, is usually an average human being who is white, able bodied, healthy, muscular, a cisgendered man, sane and powerful, and that inadvertently results in design apartheid. Le Corbusier was a strong proponent of function follows form. So, by that definition, if form is privileged and our politically unconscious sees sickness and disability as a problem and not part of the regular human experience, then access would only be for those who can climb an entire flight of stairs. And so, in architecture and design, professionals, mostly without knowing, practice design apartheid, which is an example of the political and unconscious at work. Hostile architecture, like these public benches, with seat separators to accommodate a very particular kind of sitting, but not sleeping or any other kind of posture, restrict certain people from using these spaces. Dilapidated buildings ruins, much like disabled body minds, are considered eyesores, therefore disqualified from public presence. One can safely assume that design apartheid and hostile architecture are two ends on the same spectrum of denying and limiting access. Hostile architecture further injures and debilitates precarious body minds by choreographing postures to induce pain and discomfort. Interestingly, it is clear that design and planners would prefer working on curbing access rather than creating it. The effect and the experience is then twofold. First, the built environment limits or denies access, which certainly translates to very few to no individuals contributing to new knowledge systems and pedagogies. This cycle and cultural design apartheid continues. In a university setting, then, the ideology of ability continues informing infrastructure policy, curriculum, and larger aesthetic choices and decisions. The ideology of ability was, of course, described by our favorite Tobin Sivers. In this work of ours, we made a text intervention in the status of a gallery that did not have any other means of accessing the other levels of the exhibition. The text here compares stairs to the body and has a wheelchair symbol, and then on the stairs, engaging with the ideology of ability as people like us, historically excluded from the space, then cannot participate in changing the gallery's aesthetic discourse. Also, take for example this very important educational institution the University of California, Berkeley, that I, Priyanka, am currently a student at and also teach at. One of our most prominent sites is the Sproul Hall Plaza. Now, Sproul Hall is the main admin building that has a really broad terraced staircase, which can be used as a dais to address an audience, and the stairs around it are used for sitting. It was designed in 1962 by Lawrence Halprin and now has a ramp somewhere at the back for accessibility. One of the biggest claims to fame for UC Berkeley is the free speech movement in 1964. All our students have heard of it, which was a mass student protest that lasted months, demanding the freedom of speech without punishment on campus. And of course, politicians blamed the design of the plaza that allowed students to gather and demonstrate en masse. Soon after, the California state system consciously ensured that no such university buildings were designed that had central squares or plazas of this size. These interventions take hostile architectural practices further, solidifying them as a norm. This change in laws and policies governing design is yet another example of design apartheid at work by the state but with intention to restrict. This is the most recent protest, a walkout for Gaza at Sproul Hall Plaza that I kind of attended. Kinda because how do you walk out and protest when you cannot walk? How do you stand up against authority when you can barely stand? And if you don't, are you spineless? Artist Johanna Hedva beautifully outlines this in their sick woman theory, saying, so as I lay there, unable to march, hold up a sign, shout the slogan that would be heard, or be visible in any traditional capacity as a political being, the central question of sick woman theory formed. How do you throw a brick through a window of a bank if you can't get out of bed? What then is the disabled or sick body's political validity if you can't protest or can't participate in street protest? Coming back to Berkeley's free speech movement, here's an image from the website. Last year, celebrating 60 years of free speech, we'd like to introduce this archival document from the movement. It is instructions for walkout coordinators. According to this document, there are three types of participation. A. Openly walk out. B. Call in sick. And C. Refuse to cross the picket lines. B. Calling in sick as a political strategy, refusing to engage in routine activities as an act of defiance, then gives us hope, leading us to our work, finally. Um, this work is a belt force you often see in airports and museums that restricts and reorients public movement. The belt here is embroidered with the words fall in line and attached on the other end to a walking stick. This, of course, speaks to our interest in movement and its obstruction, whether due to policing or an act of defiance. These works were site-specific installations at the Serendipity Arts Festival in Goa last December, which was at the heritage venue of an 18th century building that was formerly a Portuguese colonial era medical college and therefore has an elaborate marble staircase and no lift or ramp. Our intervention, therefore, was making a non-functional handrail in AstroTurf that you can see on the right, opposite the actual wooden handrail, with AstroTurf text cutouts on the stages with exclamations like huff, puff, gasp, sigh that we believe everyone would feel as they climbed the stairs. At the base of the staircase was the text. How many stairs must you be able to climb to be considered able-bodied? It was accompanied by a projection on the floor that reaches between a welcome mat and a Microsoft Windows pop-up of location is not available. This is not accessible. Access is denied. Across from this were a series of grab bars on a green wall, where each set of vertical grab bars functioned as a human knee in flexion and hyperextension, hurtling towards a fall. It's called minimal locomotion, as a reference to the late 19th century pioneering photographer Edward Muybridge's series Animal Locomotion, which is the first photographic study of human and animal movement. This is Muybridge's photograph on lateral curvature of the spine from the same series. Water. And you can see the frame-by-frame sequence of movement that our work references. Muybridge would set up multiple cameras with trip wires that would release the shutter, taking an exposure as the subject moved. Since both Shreyasi and I have curved spines, this image becomes pertinent as it was recorded scientifically as abnormal movements. Here's an installation diagram of our work made on AutoCAD. And in a very similar scientific vein, this work that we did at UC Berkeley was a projection of text on a measuring scale and also vinyl on the floor. This measured distance, like the distance between your toe and nail, or your scar and skin, and asks ultimately what is the distance one must be able to walk to be considered able-bodied. What then is the distance between disability and ability? This projection was accompanied by 5 detailed folio paintings of sites of the Berkeley campus on an angled shelf with a magnifying glass and astroturf-covered rolling stools for better viewing. It's important to us to consider how much the way one views art or anything at all is dictated by the position of the body. An intimate gaze of a small painting requires a seated posture, and astroturf works as accessible grass over the stools. Essentially, if I cannot sit on the grass must come to me. Like this exhibition, which we did in Delhi, where the structure of a custom bench sitting at a 90-degree angle actually facilitated people sitting and talking to each other. On the walls were a series of 33 frames as vertebrae arranged in parts of the spine, like the thoracic, lumbar, cervical, etc. This was called Disabled Dictionary South Asia Edition RAW, Speech Therapist Approved, where each of the 33 words in different South Asian languages sounded like the word reed, meaning spine, in Hindi. The painted object beside the text was made by layering paper for extra strength, as one does in the folio painting tradition, like a bark of a tree, or many spines together in solidarity. The four benches were topped with cyanotype printed cushions of a resting body, books, pills, and leaves, called sanctuary. The arrangement kept changing throughout the duration of the show, enabling different kinds of viewing positions, including lying down or taking a nap in the gallery while looking at art. Imagine that. Because, like geographer Rob Chittin says, at no point should access be sacrificed to other concerns, especially aesthetics, unless it's by these two fabulous people for satirical reasons. Thank you.